Okay, hello, hello. This episode is all about battling yourself. So I just want to jump right in. So, some common examples of battling yourself is essentially, you want to speak up, but you don't want to offend anybody, or you feel a pull to make a certain decision, but your negative Nelly thoughts are jumping in to say it isn't a good decision, or you want to make a change in your life, but those pesky, overwhelming thoughts loom over you, making you doubt if even if you could do it and keep up with it. Or, you start a new habit and you're feeling good, but then life throws you a couple curveballs and your brain tells you to just give up or why bother, or it's too hard to continue. And one is also common. We all go through these. We all have these, and they don't ever just go 100% away, right? No matter what we're doing as we're changing and evolving, these types of things and thoughts and feelings will come up. So, you see where I'm going with all this. Essentially, battling ourselves when we get hit with the midway point of making a decision that could change the trajectory of our life, that feels scary. And then hello brain, coming up with all the things to keep us safe and just go back to the way things were because it was more familiar and safe. It feels easier, more comfortable, right? So what do you do? This battle can feel like a lot some days and completely take over. And then there are other days where you can fight it off and move on, right? And but the thing is, if we are addressing this as a battle that we have to fight off, we are only adding more fuel to the negative fire here and bring up more shame and guilt for the actions we did or didn't take. Our brain can easily create excuses or reasons as to why something should be a certain way. But at the end of the day, you get to decide what you listen to and how you respond to those thoughts that pop up in your brain. So I've got a few pointers here. One, rather than fighting your brain and constantly getting yourself into this back and forth battle with yourself, look at these situations as the moment to build a relationship with your brain. Get to understand why it is coming up. One thing to help solidify this, I'm going to share the chessboard metaphor to give you a visual here. So imagine you have a chessboard. Black pieces are positive thoughts, white pieces are negative thoughts. Every time you have a negative thought, you move that white piece forward on the chessboard. And when this happens, you try to battle it with and move a black positive piece towards it. In the end, all you're doing is going back and forth with the pieces on the chessboard and becoming more and more frustrated that you aren't getting anywhere. And this is a concept within acceptance and commitment training, which is called ACT, where rather than being a chess piece, you are actually the chessboard. You are the entire board observing these thoughts and these pieces moving on their own. You get to take yourself out of the immediate picture and see it all for what it is, separate from you. And this way, you can bring more objectivity to the situation. And I've said this in past episodes, but just imagine you have a particular thought like, I suck at this, or I keep procrastinating, or I keep falling off with my morning routine, right? And in that moment, you can picture yourself pulling the thought out of your brain. And I'm visually, if you're watching on YouTube, you see me literally pulling it out of my brain and holding it in your hand and seeing this thought in your hand as separate from you. This is actually part of the core process within ACT called self as context, your observer self, and allowing in more flexible perspective taking. And honestly, this can drastically shift how you perceive the thoughts and release shame or added judgment towards yourself when they come up. Because you cannot control what thoughts pop up, but you can control how you respond to them. And I will say that until the cows come home and I'm blue in the face. So that is number one, create the space to look at your thoughts from an observer lens without the attachment to it. You are not your thoughts, but you can build a relationship with them to see why they are coming up in that moment. So in this time, to build that relationship and reduce the constant battle, ask yourself in that moment, what is my brain trying to protect me from right now? And what am I fearing could happen here? and ultimately what is hiding underneath that fear. And this brings us into the second part, which is the fact that this battle can get in the way of actually processing your thoughts and feelings altogether. The battle creates turmoil, it creates resistance, and then typically that lands into more avoidance, distraction, and essentially indulging in pleasure to get rid of any pain, right? And that's the thing, like we try to avoid the pain, but it's like we can actually choose to not add that pain, right? There's this big concept of believing that if we avoid, we can just get rid of the pain, but that's not true. And like when we avoid it, it only builds bigger and heavier pain the next time, and that is avoidable. That's what I'm trying to say here. Like, yes, in the moment, if we try to avoid the pain, we're actually creating bigger and heavier pain in the future for future us. Um, but also something that we don't think much about is how that avoidance is stored in our bodies. So whenever you suppress or avoid or push down feelings without addressing them, at least to their core, they aren't going somewhere else into the world around you. It is actually getting stored within you, in your body. Let that sink in. Your triggers, your traumas, your experiences, your responses, your avoidance, your triumphs, your struggles, your happy times, like all of the things, it all gets stored in your body. And there's a very powerful book called The Body Keeps a Score, and that statement in itself is just so accurate. The body remembers even if you don't want to. So let me just get this out there and say it. You cannot ever just get rid of your thoughts and feelings. That mentality will only keep you more stuck and believe that essentially you are broken if you don't fix it. And my love, there is absolutely nothing to fix about yourself. You are not broken. You are human. And this difficult feeling, like all of these different kinds of feelings that come up, they are so, so normal and common and a part of the human experience. We're meant to experience them and move through them. But a lot of the time, society will tell us that, we need to keep going and be professional and don't share your emotions. And it isn't okay to express these things. So we hide it, shame it, and, essentially build a harder shell where we ultimately lose self-trust with ourselves over time because of it. And girl, that is like not what we are here to do in this world. You are meant to be seen, heard, understood in the way that you desire to be. And you deserve to have everything that your heart desires. Even if your brain is screaming at you that you can't, that is where building the relationship is so key. But in the second point about avoiding that in between stage can actually be the reason that we never grow. So when you avoid the discomfort, you remain stuck and you build a bigger wall for shame to just parade around on as the watcher of everything, rather than you being the watcher and observer of everything going on and taking that responsibility, owning your life and where you want to go. Trust me when I say it, I know it doesn't feel easy. I get that. Heck, if it was, we would all be perfectly healed and not need mentors or coaches or therapists or close knit circles of friends and supporters, right? Like we would be managing life swimmingly if it wasn't hard. But that in between stage is where the magic happens. So, what is this in between? The in between is where you get messy and uncomfortable. You sit with that discomfort. And just a heads up here, we aren't thinking of this in an all or nothing mindset either. We don't just jump into the deep end on our first day of learning how to swim, right? So I'm not saying like if you feel super overwhelmed and scared, I'm not expecting you to go sit with it for hours right out the gate, okay? We take baby steps around here to ease ourselves and our brains and our bodies into this messy middle ground to get more familiar with it so that we can handle the tough shit in a way that is a lot more calm and powerful. We know that we can get our hands dirty and still kick ass, you know? Like it it sounds scary initially, but like we are human and we're meant to experience life. And when we don't allow ourselves that experience, we get caught up in our head and we don't take the action. So don't let your brain dictate this and tell you otherwise. It's okay to get messy, right? The in between is that middle ground where you have certain feelings come up. And rather than dwelling or jumping to avoid them, you breathe, you see them, you hold them lovingly, and you acknowledge their presence. And initially, this could be like not even 30 seconds, right? Like it could be less than that. It could be a couple breaths of giving yourself the power of a pause before responding to any of it. Just simply pausing and noticing, like that in itself, one is so powerful. And it sounds like such a simple thing, but if you continue to practice that over time, like, oh my gosh, I cannot even tell you how life-changing that is. So that in itself feels uncomfortable initially because our survival instinct will kick in. And, when we're trying to pause and breathe, like our survival instinct will kick in and want to fight, flight, freeze, or fawn as those trauma responses to protect ourselves. But honestly, 99% of the time, you are safe to move through these situations. Even though your survival instinct and primal brain, which I want to remind you is literally like our brains are still evolutionarily built as like the cave people times. So like our brains are still very primal. And it's going to pop up to give you the red flags in that moment. And this is the exact time to address it so that your body can get accustomed to a new and powerful response rather than the survival. Then you can move through it with a lot more ease over time. And I can't even explain to you how life-changing that really is. So I'll ask you this. Let's just like go deep here. What is the worst thing in your life right now? Just give yourself a second. Just think, what is, quote unquote, the worst thing that's like coming up to mind for you right now? How long have you had this particular thought or feeling come up? And how often do you think or feel it? And ultimately, let's be real here. How is it working for you? By allowing yourself to think about this thing and move through this thing or lack thereof or avoid it, like really allow yourself to think about these things. And now, what if I told you, like, let's just have a fun scenario here. What if I told you that you could wave a magic wand and delete that thing from your life? What would you do differently? Like, really just take a second and sit with this question. If that thing was no longer causing you pain or discomfort, what would you do differently? Now, as I said earlier, you can't just delete something from your life, but like, how did it feel to think about your life and what you would be doing instead? Sometimes we have to get in that imaginary world and really tap into these scenarios to see what is holding us back. And, like, what if you could be doing those things, even with this thing present from time to time in your life? So now we're kind of coming back into reality. Like, imagine if you actually allowed yourself to move through this difficult thing, but still be able to do those things that you said you would do differently, even if this thing was present. And the thing is, like, if you are telling yourself that, quote unquote, because of this thing, I can't succeed, then you are playing into the world of a fixed mindset. You can support yourself through these scary moments, and be happy and fulfilled. It doesn't need to be like an or situation. We can definitely be in that power of and. I can have scary feelings and be successful. And that is ultimately the secret sauce of living your best life. Allowing space for the messy in between and having fun along the way, right? Like, I know this sounds kind of like a deep and like intense conversation, but like we can have fun through this process. Like that it like we are capable of having that. It doesn't, as I said, it doesn't need to be in an or situation. Okay. So that was a lot. And with all that said, I'm here to show you how to do all this because my new live program starts next week on Monday, November 21st. It is called, you guessed it, The In Between. It is hosted within a Facebook group where I will have 2 mini trainings and then a Q&A call to ask any looming questions you may have while you're going through this experience. And you will honestly get the most powerful activation exercises I've ever shared. Like it is going to be so, so juicy and expansive. And within these trainings, you will be offered ways to move through the messy in between and get supported in the group for the entire week. So if you have a specific question or situation come up while you do the work, pop it into the group and you'll get coached by me. This is a beautiful experience where you get to lean into the messy in between with so much love and community and guidance along the way. And might I add, like, it will be fun too, as I shared earlier. Like, this can be a fun experience too. And so, essentially, like, I'll be sharing the 2 trainings, activation exercises, live support in the Facebook group for the entire week, and one of my absolute favorite visualization audio recordings that I've honestly never shared before. And it is, oh my God, life changing. It is going to show you that you can do hard things and you do have the tools already within you to navigate this messy in between. And honestly, I am just here to help guide you through it all. This doesn't have to feel like the big looming and scary thing that we might think it is, right? It can feel uplifting and rewarding. And honestly, if you go through this experience and continue to practice these skills that I teach you over a long period of time, you will be golden. You will feel way more supported and confident and trusting in yourself and your abilities. And the thing is, you get to choose how you show up to this, how you respond to all of these situations. And I am here to walk you through it step by step. So I'm just like so excited. I'll put the link in the show notes to snag your spot in my new program, The In Between. It is also an insane price. It's only $88 Canadian. Like, what? Can we just pause for a second? You're getting an entire week of support with 2 trainings, a Q&A call, exercises, and a visualization audio. Like, okay, this is just like absolutely a no-brainer. And to top it off, if you join this offer, you'll get an exclusive access to a bonus Black Friday pricing for my brand new project that starts in January. And this new project is going to be bonkers. I cannot wait. Like, think of all the resources you can imagine when it comes to like healing and self-growth. And you get Q&A calls with me monthly for an entire year at an absolutely ridiculous price. Like Christmas cream early, I must say. So get into my new program, The In Between, which starts next Monday, November 21st, and you'll get all the inside scoop of my big project for January. Okay, that is all for today. I love you so much. If this hits home for you, or there was one point where you were like, oh my gosh, yes, like this is where I'm at, then send me a DM on Instagram. I would honestly love to connect and hear your story. It is one of my favorite things getting to know you all more. But either way, come say hi if you are like even new around here. My Instagram is at soniajmac.coaching. And all the details for my current offers are in my link in my bio over there. All right, that is all for today, and I will chat with you all next week. Bye, loves.